Why communication is not the key when dealing with a narcissist, an emotional abuser, or toxic family member. You know how we all hear how communication is so important in relationships, any form of relationship, whether it be with your family, friends, significant other. In order for any relationship to be sustained and flourish, it needs communication. And for the most part, it works if two understanding, healthy adults are able to communicate with each other. In most cases, it does help to address conflict and certain issues in a relationship. But that is not the case with family members that are toxic, that are narcissists, and emotional abusers. And this is coming from someone who has had to try to communicate with my family for years. And it has been fruitless, it has been useless, it has been a waste of my time. But I wouldn't change the fact that I tried to communicate with my family because I wouldn't have known. If you don't address an issue, you're never going to know if there was ever going to be a resolution, if the situation could have turned out differently. So I don't regret trying to communicate with my family, but I will no longer try to communicate with my family. A certain level of communication is still required as to setting boundaries and being clear and firm as to where you stand. Now, like I've said in previous episodes, I have a narcissistic mother and a narcissistic sister. They have been emotionally abusive to me for years, and I was unaware of this because I was young, I was naive, and honestly, I just didn't want to believe that my own family would abuse me. And some of the abuse that I've endured it came in a form of a joke or I don't know, something that maybe I also thought it was just, family being family. It was just us teasing each other, more like them teasing me. At the time, I also didn't take it seriously because if you laugh along to a joke that could be belittling or undermines you or hurts you, people obviously don't think that's problematic. But you might be laughing along even if it hurts you. You might be just going along with the joke because maybe you're afraid to stand up for yourself, maybe you're still young, maybe you are in a situation where it's your parents um that makes the joke, or it's your siblings, or it could be different reasons. For me, I was never somebody who was able to stand up for themselves. Plus, at the time I was young. But even like in my early adult years, like in my early 20s, I still couldn't stand up for myself because that was just not a characteristic I possessed. I was not confident. I was not confrontational. So some of the hurtful things that would happen, I still laughed along. So in my last episode, I talked about how I had to have a conversation with my family as to why I've been the way I am because the past couple of months, it has just been a realization and a revelation of how my family has been abusive and the fact that they're narcissistic. And I had to have that conversation with them so that they can kind of know what's going on with me because I started being distant. I started being reserved. I am typically a reserved person, but I started even just being reserved from them. So I had to kind of let them know what was happening. And I did say essentially that I've realized that from my childhood up until now, they have seriously affected my self esteem by some of the jokes that they've made, jokes that I've laughed, that I've also laughed at because I just couldn't stand up for myself, by some of the things they've said to me, by some of the imperfections and flaws they've pointed out to me. And listen, I'm not fighting against the fact that I have flaws and imperfections, but what I'm fighting here is that the people who are supposed to love you and accept you with your imperfections and flaws are the very people that actually make you hate your imperfections and flaws instead of helping you to embrace them. And that is how my family has been to me. I even mentioned the fact that when I was a kid, they used to tease me about my ugly feet and how that affected me as an adult, so much so that I hate wearing sandals. I hate anything that shows my feet, which just goes to show that their jokes, the way they addressed that, the way they addressed my imperfections, my physical imperfections, even the fact that I was super slim as a child, it really affected my confidence and it made me not to embrace my imperfections, because we all have imperfections, we all have flaws, but these are things that we should learn to embrace instead of being resentful or hating them, so much so that other people even opt for surgery because they hate their physical imperfections. And so, with that conversation, already knowing that communication is not key when dealing with these people, I was very surface level. I didn't want to dig too deep. I didn't accuse them or point out the fact that they are emotional abusers, that they are narcissists, that they are toxic. These are definitely things that you should not point out. I don't think only to narcissists, but people in general don't like to be termed. So I tried to keep it at surface level and not really go deep with it. There are a lot of things that I didn't cover in that conversation. I just covered enough to kind of clear the air, because there's no way I could be truthful with them, because they would just flip it back to me as it actually happened. Even though I tried to be shallow and surface level in terms of just addressing what has been happening with me, somehow it was thrown back at me. One of the things that my sister said in that conversation is that uh, she wants to make me accountable saying for not saying all these things all these years. And when I responded as to say that I was young, was naive, and she knows that I've never been good at speaking up for myself, she insisted on that, like it's my fault for not saying anything, basically. And this is why I'm saying communication with a narcissist, with an emotional abuser or toxic family member is useless. You do have to get to a point where you address certain things for your peace of mind. You do have to address certain things in order to establish boundaries, but never really expect anything to come out of that. When you set a boundary and let your family know, it's just so that they know what is happening. Because I do feel that it is unfair for them to be in the dark when, let's say, for example, you always borrow your family money or you give them money, and that has been something that has been stressing you out and you're no longer comfortable with, and you feel like you're being taken advantage of, and you want to stop that. You need to address that and let them know that, hey, maybe I have other financial obligations, so I can no longer give or borrow you money as I used to, instead of just cutting the money flow and no longer giving the money, because what they will typically do is make you look like the bad guy, even though the money is yours and you have every right to not give anybody your money if you don't want to. But what will happen is that they will make you look like the bad guy if you don't try some sort of way to address it. You don't have to go as deep as saying, hey guys, I think you are not thinking about me and my needs, I feel like you're selfish, you don't appreciate me, and you're taking advantage of me. You don't have to put it like that because these are not reasonable people. One thing that you have to keep in mind that I now have to constantly remind myself, they are not reasonable people. They will not put themselves in your shoes. Without fail, they will always not be able to put themselves in your shoes. So don't think, if you think, or maybe you're thinking of taking the vulnerable route and you're thinking, let me just be vulnerable and open with my family about how I'm feeling about this issue, address this. Don't go that route. Be firm, be logic, and keep it short. If you start cutting back on giving a certain amount of money to your family, or you stop doing something that you're no longer comfortable doing, or you were never comfortable doing, whatever it is that you want to address and tackle with your family, be firm, keep it short, don't be vulnerable. They're not gonna fall for that. I know my family over and over again, they've never fallen for the vulnerable me because I'm a very sensitive emotion. I don't even want to say emotional. I'm I'm more I don't know how to put it. I guess emotional is the best word, but I am more of an emotions based kind of person where I believe that if I just open up my heart and I share with you how I feel, that you're gonna understand that. And coming from a genuine place, not putting up an act, thinking that if I let somebody know how their actions or certain things they've said to me, how they have hurt me, in my mind, I think that is how connections and issues can be resolved. Like, not all the time, but for me, being vulnerable, I see it as a good thing. I saw it as a good thing so much so that it blinded me that other people don't function like that, especially a narcissist. A narcissist lacks empathy. They can never put themselves in your shoes. They they are not drawn by emotions unless it's their emotions and it concerns them, unless it's a case where you have to think about their emotions, but they're not going to think about your emotions. They're not going to think about how something makes you feel. So don't try to go with the route of, you know what, I'm just going to be open and honest with my family. Not to say you should be dishonest, but you should be concise. You should be brief and straightforward in your dealings with your family. Don't think if I just open up my heart and bare my soul out, that's not gonna do anything to them. That's not gonna move them. In fact, it's actually just gonna they're gonna weaponize how vulnerable you've been and it's gonna be used against you. And if you have been in the situation like I have with my emotional abusive family and my narcissistic family, you already know that there have been times where you've tried to open up to your family and it was used against you. Think of that time right now when one time you tried to be open, to be vulnerable, and it was used against you. I remember I once told my ex that my deepest fear is if I open up and something is used against me. Like that was like my deepest fear. And at the time, I didn't even know that I had been part of a toxic family dynamic. I was in varsity. I was with my boyfriend at the time, and I told him this because it's something that was always in my heart because it had happened in my family. I couldn't connect the dots at the time that the reason I feared my vulnerability being used against me was because my family used my vulnerability against me. Being vulnerable is a good thing, and you shouldn't lose that. But Dr. Ramani said this powerful thing that choose your people, know your people. Like, even with a significant other, if you have met this wonderful person, take time to really be vulnerable and open up to that person. That doesn't mean you should be shielded and guarded, but be logical. This is a stranger, okay? So this is how you should also treat your family, that these are strangers and I'm not just going to open up my heart. And Dr. Ramani puts it in the best way. Just look at my show notes or look at the description box below for Dr. Ramani's videos. But she put it best when she said, your passwords for your bank account or your email address or whatever personal credentials that you use for your personal stuff that you wouldn't just give to anyone. Think of your family like that. Protect your passwords. Don't just hand them out. You would only give your password for your bank account to someone that you trust that much that you can leave your bank card with them and you trust them with your password, that they're not going to do just whatever. Sure, people can betray you even though you thought you could trust them, but that's not on you. That's on them. But think about it like that your family, once you've realized and have come to terms with the fact that they have been abusive, they have been emotionally abusive, and that they are narcissists, if they are, that they are toxic, if they are, come to terms with the fact that there are just certain things that you'll never be able to share with your family. And so think about it like that when it comes to communicating with your family. Stop trying to be open and vulnerable, because if you met somebody a couple of days ago, would you be telling them all your secrets and your lifelong stories and being open and vulnerable, sharing your fears and your worries with them? Treat your family like a stranger, because if you don't, you will continue to be hurt. Your efforts will go unnoticed and they will continue to hurt you and damage you even further, because they've already hurt you enough. They've already damaged you enough. Your confidence is a result of their damaging or lack of confidence. Your low self-esteem is a result of their damage. Your anxiety is a result of their damage. The issues, mental issues the void and emptiness that you have inside is a result of their damage, of their abusive relationship that they've had with you. And so no, it's absolutely useless to communicate with a narcissist. This is why I'm saying your communication should be surface level, straightforward, and brief. Don't try to over explain yourself. Don't try to write a list of reasons as to why you can no longer give them money, or why you can no longer spend time with them, or why you cannot do this and that, or why you don't want to do this and that or prefer to do. Don't try to over explain. It's not gonna touch them. Nothing touches their hearts. It's not gonna touch them and get them to a point where they understand. So instead of wasting your time and giving this essay long explanation of why you doing what you're doing or setting this boundary, first of all, don't even say those words. Don't say I'm setting a boundary. You're speaking to people who are not reasonable. Don't say I'm setting a boundary. You know you're setting a boundary. Say what you just want to do or implement in the relationship. Don't use words like I need to set. No. What they're going to hear is you rejecting them, or you not loving them, you not appreciating them. Don't use words like that. If you want to stop giving your family money, just say, hey guys, I can no longer give you this X amount of money because I have other financial obligations now. That's it. Brief, short, straight to the point. Brief and short, same word. Straight to the point. Don't over explain yourself. First of all, you don't need to. Secondly, it will not do anything to these. They're still going to look at you as the bad guy. Whether, excuse me, whether you say or set your boundary in one sentence or you set your boundary in 5 pages worth of an essay, they're still going to see you as the bad guy. So instead of wasting your time writing a 5 page essay of what you're going to say to your family to set this boundary, just make it short. Just make it short, get it straight to the point, because they're still going to view you as the bad guy. These people, these narcissistic, emotionally abusive, toxic people, they hate it when people set boundaries with them. They hate that you're no longer giving them something that you used to give them for all your life. They hate that now you stop praising them as much as you used to praise them. They hate that now you stop putting them on this pedestal that you used to put them. They hate that now you're no longer allowing them as much as you used to allow them in your space, and they negatively impacted your life. They hate it. So there's no need to drag this process, because they're gonna hate it anyway. They're gonna hate the fact that you're no longer giving them money. So there's no need for you to write a whole freaking essay about it, because they're gonna hate it anyway. They're not gonna like the fact that you've established this boundary. Communication is useless with these people. Keep it short. Keep it short, straight to the point, because no matter what you say, no matter how reasonable your request is, they're going to hate it. Because here's what families think, especially narcissistic families. They think your priority should be them, never you, never anything else. Forget what you want to do with your life. Forget the goals that you have. Forget your own preferences and needs. It should always be about them. Forget about the fact that you need some alone time. No, you should always spend time with them. Forget about that you have other financial obligations. No. When they need money, when your mother needs money, just give it to her. Now, I'm not saying do something unreasonable. If you know your mother needs money and maybe you are the only financial source that your mother has, that is fine. You can budget that in, and you know the amount of money that you are able to give to your mother. But that doesn't mean every time she needs something or just saw something she wants to buy, or in the middle of the month you give her money. That doesn't mean whenever your family demands, because basically they demand that you be there for a certain occasion or family gathering, that you just up and leave and you just go there. No. These are unreasonable people. Keep that in mind. You are dealing with very unreasonable people. That's what I've learned about my mother and my sister. They are very unreasonable, and they will never, ever put themselves in my shoe. No, ever. The fact that I am introverted and I recharge by being by myself, it is such a big ask for me to just want to be by myself. It's almost as if I'm saying, oh, I don't care about my family, but I try my best, and Lord knows I try. Because I know that being an introvert doesn't mean I should just always be by myself and never spend time with the people that I care about. I've always tried my best to balance that out, but I need my me time. So even if in 24 hours in a day, I spend my time, let's say I spend 20 hours of my day, so including day and night here in this example, let's say I spend 20 hours of my day with my family, and then the remainder, the 4 hours left of the day, I just want to myself. Guess what my family would do? They still wouldn't understand. Because how dare I want to be by myself while they are there? But this is my need. I need to be alone. That's how I recharge. For them, being social, being with people, that's how maybe they recharge. But honestly, I also think it's because they don't like to be alone in their thoughts. They don't like that. It's one thing that for them, how they recharge is by being with people and being social. But honestly, another reason they don't like being alone is because they don't like being with their thoughts. And I don't mind being with my thoughts. I mean, sometimes it gets depressing, but I typically enjoy being by myself, listening to music, reading a book, or even just being in my thoughts. That's how I recharge. But no, it's a lot for my family. It feels like I'm being selfish by wanting to spend some time to myself after I've given of myself. That's the thing with families like these. Families that are toxic, families that are draining. No matter what you do, it's not good enough. It's not good in nothing. Even if, let's say, maybe you live far away from your home and you try to come every 3 months or even every month, you say, let me come back home it's not enough. Nothing you do. You say, you know what, I'm going to budget this amount of money to give to my mother or to give back home. It's not enough. You say, I'm going to do X, Y, Z to make my family happy, to please them, even though it doesn't really make me happy. It's not enough. So might as well make you happy. I am not saying be selfish. Listen, I am not about this trend of this nowadays where we're saying I'm gonna be the word selfish is still, it still has a negative connotation. So let's not try to spice it up and make it sound good. Being selfish is a bad thing. But thinking of yourself is a good thing. Knowing when you need to put yourself first is a good thing. That is not being selfish. That is knowing what's best for you. So I don't like it when we use the word selfish like, oh, I'm just going to be selfish with my time. No, you're not being selfish. You're doing what's right. You're taking some time to be with yourself, to do what you like. That's not being selfish. That's a thing that's necessary for every human being, to be by themselves, to do what's best for them. Because when you are nourished, when you are able to take care of yourself and love yourself and do what feels good to you, and hopefully led by the Holy Spirit, because doing whatever feels good to you cannot always bear the best fruits. So let's keep that in mind, okay? Everything is permissible, but not everything is constructive, okay? So putting yourself first at times, doing what's best for you, actually even benefits the people around you, because when you take care of yourself and know when to put yourself first, actually benefits those around you, because they can even enjoy your company more. You can be a healthier version of yourself when you are able to be by yourself, take care of yourself, and put yourself first in certain areas. But your family doesn't want you to put yourself first. It should always be them. It should always, they wouldn't verbally say this. They wouldn't explicitly say this, that, hey, you should always put us first. No, they wouldn't say it. But the demands that they have of you, they actually say that. The things that they require of you, they actually say that we are your everything and we should always be number one. So don't take the time to think of yourself. Don't take the time to put yourself first and do what feels good to you and what is good for you. No, these are selfish people. Now, this is where the word applies. They are selfish because they don't want you to think of yourself or put yourself first in certain areas or do what's best for you. That's them being selfish. You putting yourself first when it's needed, it's not selfish. Don't use the word selfish. It's just doing the right thing. Okay? But them not wanting you to put yourself first in certain areas and do what feels good for you and what nourishes you and what feeds your soul, that's them being selfish because they think everything should be about them.